right, it is time for the World This Week review, and joining us in studio is our resident analyst here on Worldview, Abel Oyeyo, who is an international affairs expert. Thank you, Abel. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
So a lot to cover. Let's begin with the London attack and the global reaction that we saw to that. Many international global leaders calling to be and stand in solidarity with London. And many questions have been asked off of this attack. Of course, it's being the biggest since 2005 in Britain,
Yes.
on whether the face of terror is changing. And as far as now, it's not the scale and the magnitude of an attack. It is this type of attacks that just cause fear and go to terrorize people. Do you share with that in that sentiment?
Yeah, and I think that becomes a big issue because it's all about inspiration. You look at maybe, let's say, ISIS all the way back in Syria and Iraq, and then you carry out an attack far away from the place where the militant group is based. So the person who's going to attack you is not someone who's going to come from far away.
Yeah.
It's someone who resides close to you, but who's been inspired by the mother terror group. So that is the new face of terror, and I think it calls for what we call extra vigilance on the person, on yourself. Yeah.
Yes, because one of the things, as much as they're saying there was no evidence to say that this was, planned with other individuals, there have been arrests, there have been raids in several homes in London and Birmingham. What does this speak to?
Now, the guy was, let's call him some kind of lone wolf attacker, and
Yes.
Of course, investigations have shown that he's not connected to any kind of group. And the guys who've been arrested, those are separate cases of planned, attacks.
Okay.
So I think, again, that goes to tell us about the new face of terrorism. So I think it's going to call for more intelligence, of course, gathering from persons of interest. And there has to be what we call follow-up. Because Masood was, I think, investigated some times back.
Yes, he was.
Yes, and then I think at some point he was left to go free because of maybe lack of sufficient evidence to keep following and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have to keep on tracking some of these guys and profiling. As much as, of course, it sounds weird, it's got to happen.
It has to happen.
Yeah.
And then there's been a ban on a number of electronics by the US and the UK.
And the UK.
So any gadget other than actually a smartphone, you have your laptops, you name it,
Yes.
have been banned from North Africa and some parts of the Middle East. What do you make of that?
I think that is informed by what we call collected intelligence. You remember sometimes back after Trump was sworn in as president, some raid was carried out in Yemen. And some information was collected, of course. I think that is what has been analyzed and used to make that kind of decision. Because I think they expect these guys to carry out an attack using an electronic device that is...
Already one was witnessed. I don't remember the exact timing, but in a plane, a laptop blew off and, there was a hole in the plane.
That is it. So I think that is the reason as to why they've gone ahead to do that kind of thing, to call for that kind of ban, so as to make sure the terrorists do not take advantage of electronic devices like tablets and all that to, launch an attack in a plane.
Yeah.
And of course, they've talked about indefinite time in terms of
how long
time.
this
Yeah,
goes.
it's like it can go on forever, based, of course, on the presence of the threat itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quite changing times with the threat of terror in the world.
So you can
now.
no longer enjoy your tablet in a plane.
Yeah, perhaps watch the screens they provide in the planes if you're flying.
As boring as they might be now, you have to live with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's, of course, the IGAD summit on Somalia, finding those durable solutions. Today is an interministerial summit, or rather meeting ahead of that special summit.
Exactly.
And there are a number of issues, as we were just talking earlier, with the regional affairs analyst, John Gashie. For you, where does priority stand? Because if it's not famine and drought, there's the issue of refugees, there's the concern and security within Somalia, and then there's a new leadership in place.
Yeah, I think the main focus is going to be on refugees, of course. That is the theme of the meeting, the summit itself. Now, but you see, there are so many underlying issues when you talk about refugees. They didn't just decide to move from Somalia to Kenya or wherever they are now. We're talking about 1.1 million internally displaced persons within Somalia itself, and of course, close to another 1 million who've moved outside the country, of course, including the guys in Dadaab in Kenya now, the camp that is about to be closed. So they have to talk about security itself. They have to talk about empowerment of the current leadership that is in place. They have to talk about continued support from the international community to make sure Somalia itself is stable enough to accommodate the refugees. So you cannot talk about symptoms. You have to deal with the
main
disease
problem.
itself.
Okay.
Yes.
Many thanks, Abel. Always a pleasure to have you with us here on Worldview, reviewing the week that has been. Abel Oyeyo, an international relations analyst. And we now quickly want to shift our attention to our Trix Ngado, who's standing by for us, to have a look at world press.